really builds a nation? When you open a history book, the answer seems clear. It's the generals on horseback, the presidents signing declarations, the men whose statues stand in our city squares. We are taught a story of founding fathers, of male inventors, of celebrated war heroes. But what if that story is a lie, not a complete lie, but a story with half its pages ripped out? What if some of the most courageous, brilliant, and transformative figures in American history have been deliberately erased from the narrative? Tonight, we are putting those pages back. We are uncovering the forgotten voices of America's women, the spies, the revolutionaries, and the pioneers whose bravery rivals and often surpasses that of the men who have become legends. Our first story begins on a dark, stormy night in 1777. Every American school child knows the tale of Paul Revere's midnight ride, but almost no one knows the story of Sybil Ludington. On April 26th, a British force attacked Danbury, New York, threatening to destroy critical colonial supplies. A rider was needed to alert the scattered militia. But this rider wasn't a grown man. She was a 16-year-old girl. Sybil Ludington climbed onto her horse and rode 40 miles through the pitch-black, rain-soaked wilderness. That's more than double the distance Paul Revere covered. She rode completely alone, evading British patrols and bandits, her only guide the familiar paths of her hometown. Her heroic, all-night journey successfully mustered hundreds of troops who marched to fight the British. Yet, while Paul Revere's name was immortalized in a famous poem, Sybil's story was lost for over a century, a footnote preserved only in family records. She wasn't just a patriot, she was a teenage girl who outrode a legend. 9 months before Rosa Parks became the iconic mother of the civil rights movement, another woman refused to give up her seat on a segregated bus in Montgomery, Alabama. Her name was Claudette Colvin, and she was only 15 years old. On March 2, 1955, when the bus driver ordered her to move, she refused, declaring, "It's my constitutional right to sit here." She was forcibly dragged off the bus by police officers and arrested. Her act of defiance was a lightning rod in the community. But when civil rights leaders were looking for a symbol to rally behind, they passed over Claudette. They feared that her youth and the fact that she became pregnant shortly after her arrest would make her an inappropriate or unrespectable face for the movement. They chose Rosa Parks instead, but here is the erased truth. Claudette Colvin was one of the 4 brave women who served as plaintiffs in the landmark court case, Browder v. Gale. It was this case, not the bus boycott, that legally ended segregation on public transportation. Claudette didn't just sit down on a bus, she stood up in a federal court, yet her name was silenced for decades. During the height of the Civil War, the Union had a secret weapon operating inside the very heart of the enemy's command, the Confederate White House. That weapon was Mary Bowser. Born into slavery in Virginia, Mary was secretly educated and possessed a photographic memory. Through a complex network of Union spies, she was placed as a servant inside the home of Confederate President Jefferson Davis. Pretending to be illiterate, she would clean his office, memorizing the contents of secret military dispatches, troop movement plans, and official correspondence she saw on his desk. Each night, she would relay this priceless intelligence to Union handlers. Her espionage was so flawless that she was never once suspected. But the very thing that made her a brilliant spy is what caused her to be forgotten. To protect her and the spy ring, the Union military destroyed almost all official records of her work after the war. Her success required her to be a ghost, and in the end, history allowed her to remain one. Now, let's leap forward to the dawn of the digital age. Every time you use a smartphone, a computer, or an app, you are benefiting from the work of a woman most people have never heard of, Rear Admiral Grace Hopper. In the 1950s, computers were behemoths that could only be operated by a handful of experts who understood complex machine code. Grace Hopper had a revolutionary idea. What if we could talk to computers in plain English? She invented the first compiler, a groundbreaking program that translated human language into computer code. This invention is the bedrock of all modern software. She was instrumental in developing COBOL, one of the first and most enduring programming languages. Her contributions are as fundamental to our daily lives as Thomas Edison's light bulb. Yet, a recent survey revealed a shocking fact: less than 15% of Americans know her name. She was a visionary who taught machines to speak our language, but history has yet to learn to speak hers. In the 1840s, a different kind of war was being waged in America, war against the inhumane treatment of the mentally ill. The champion of this cause was Dorothea Dix, a teacher from Massachusetts. Dix launched a one-woman investigation into the conditions of the nation's jails and asylums. What she found was a nightmare. People suffering from mental illness were not treated as patients, they were treated as animals. They were chained in unheated cellars, caged, beaten, and left in their own filth. Horrified, Dix began a relentless crusade. She traveled across the country, meticulously documenting these abuses and using her data-driven reports to lobby state legislatures. She was a force of nature, refusing to be ignored. Her tireless advocacy led directly to the creation of more than 30 state-funded mental hospitals, establishing the principle that mental health care was a public responsibility. She fundamentally transformed American medicine, yet her name is a whisper in the history she helped to write. Our final story is of a journalist who fought a war against terror not with a gun, but with a pen. Her name was Ida B. Wells. Born into slavery in 1862, Wells became a teacher and later the co-owner of a newspaper in Memphis, Tennessee. After 3 of her friends were lynched, Wells dedicated her life to exposing this horrific form of racial violence. At great personal risk, she traveled throughout the South, investigating lynchings and publishing her findings. She used data and meticulous research to prove that the common excuse for lynching, that it was a response to crimes by black men, was a lie. It was, she exposed, a brutal tool of economic and racial oppression. Her press was destroyed by a mob, and a bounty was placed on her head, forcing her to flee to the North, but she never stopped writing. Her powerful, data-driven pamphlets became a cornerstone of the anti-lynching movement and directly contributed to the founding of the NAACP. She pioneered investigative journalism as we know it, yet for decades her courage was a story told only in the margins. Sybil Ludington, Claudette Colvin, Mary Bowser, Grace Hopper, Dorothea Dix, Ida B. Wells, these are not just interesting side notes to history, they are foundational figures. Their stories reveal a pattern of deliberate erasure where women were ignored, silenced, or forgotten because of their gender, their race, or the radical nature of their ideas. History isn't just a collection of facts we are taught in school. It is a narrative, a story we choose to tell ourselves about who we are. By reclaiming the stories of these forgotten women, we are not just correcting the record. We are creating a truer, more complex, and more heroic picture of America itself. The story of this nation wasn't just written by its founding fathers. It was forged in the fire of its forgotten mothers, sisters, and daughters. And it's time we finally learned their names.